Just before we delve there, so I'm curious as to how you've taken in the events of the week with, well, we've got 4 active lawsuits now on a concussion front, and knowing that you're one of the sort of the pivotal figures as to where things change in this journey.
Yeah, it's funny because, and I can only speak from my experience, but because mine was quite graphic, and then what followed on from there in terms of returning to play, I think really sparked the new protocols that have come in, and I still think we've got a lot of work to do, but I think I was relatively lucky in my career because it was that one. Then I had one in under 18s that was a clean knockout, and never really much in between. Now that doesn't mean I'm saved from damage down the track.
What year was that? I thought it was 13 or 14.
2010.
2010.
So it's a year on from Max Rook and the one we showed last night.
Did you have any issue going back on the ground? Did you have any say in going back on the ground after that incident?
Yeah, so back then the protocol basically was that they gave you 3 words to remember. So there wasn't a baseline test or anything like that. They gave you 3 words. And stupidly thinking back now, because it was so graphic, I had mates come down to the rooms and had a little bit of help probably remembering the words, which, you know, I'm not in the right frame of mind to be thinking quite straight at that time.
What were they?
I was like telephone, girlfriend and horse. You know, pretty basic words, but when you're in that situation, you can't remember really anything, your own name. So I remembered that, and I remember going back out and just thinking that I needed to prove that I was okay to come back on. So it was quite stupid. But then what I didn't prepare for and what we couldn't test or foresee happening was, because during a season, the weeks are relatively low level in terms of the way that you train. So I felt fine, no worries at all, no headaches, no nothing. But when I got back to game day and there was that heightened intensity and the really fast motion in which the game's played, I'd felt like I was probably 10 to 15% off. And that went on for 3 weeks, possibly 4 weeks. So when they're talking about introducing a longer layoff time, I'd be an advocate for it.
So it's minimum 12 days now. The NRL's just gone for 11 days. If there was an international standard that was 26, I think is the one that's been spoken about, would you believe in that?
Yeah, I'd support that. And that's no scientific background, nothing, but just from my own experience, 28 days, I would have been just okay to play. Yeah, but everything else suggested during the week that I was fine to return to the field. It was just the way that I felt out on the ground, which you couldn't measure. I'd felt like I'd had 3 or 4 beers.
Have you felt post-retirement in any way that you've been affected by the concussion?
No, and I haven't, but I worry about it because the more that it gets brought up, the more you try to start to think about and try and recollect your career and whether, you know, those impacts will have a say later on in life. So I haven't touched wood at the moment, but that's not to say that it won't happen further down the field, further down the track.
So when you make an error when you're talking, or you're forgetful, or you think you should remember something, do you actually say, do you think, well, that's odd? Does that ever happen to you, or does your wife say to you, "You're stupid, Jordan,"
no,
because
to be honest, Robbo, it does. Yeah, but then I just try and tell myself that that's probably happened all my life, but maybe it hasn't. I mean, we all become forgetful at some stage. And whether it's attributed to that or not, I don't know. But yeah, do I sometimes worry about when these cases are brought up and you look at the collision stuff? Yeah, I worry.
To the here and the now, because that's a conversation that's going to continue throughout this year and more broadly.